All praises to the Most High, power of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is March 27th, 2017, and I'm doing another lesson here, just searching out this whole story of Adam and the Garden of Eden, and looking at how it really stacks up with history and what's in the Bible and what sense we can make of it. The lesson here is about Jericho. As I've already mentioned before, that through all this studying I learned that Jericho seems to be older than what we read of in the Bible. The Bible doesn't really give us a lot of the dates that people are finding nowadays. I mean, I hate to sound like in this video I'm putting them down, but the teachers in Christianity where I spent most of the years of my life cared so little about the history of the Bible. That's really very sad. I wasted a lot of time there. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Here it is now that, they could have given some more talks about this. They're just concerned so much about being saved, being saved, being saved. And while they're doing that and talking about the wisdom of the Spirit, you don't have any knowledge in life of some basic things that's going to help you to understand what's going on in the Bible, which is the main book you're reading if you say you're a Christian and you're worshiping God. So now doing my own search outside of that, I'm starting to notice that there's a whole lot more information in the world that actually tells you some things that you can use to better understand what's going on with the Bible, and more importantly, what the Creator is actually doing and the people he said he's working with in the Bible. So I read here from Genesis 4 in verse 16, "And Cain went out from the presence of the Most High and dwelt in the land of Nod on the east of Eden." So, as I'm talking here about Jericho, because through all of these past few videos I've noticed that Jericho is said to be really old, probably 8,000 to 10,000 years. Some are saying about 8,000 years old. So when I get this teaching from when I was a small boy that the earth is about 6,000 years old, and Adam and the Garden of Eden began somewhere around 4000 or 4004 BC was the last person I read from. They quoted that time. Then it makes me really wonder what in the world is going on with the truth book called the Bible. Because so far I'm not finding too many people talking about that Jericho isn't that old. It seems to me to be the going thing that Jericho really is much older than the average person reading the Bible thinks. Of course, there are people who will challenge anything, and I should talk about that in another video. But in this video, I want to show some information here about Jericho. And the reason why I started as well talking about Jericho is because, they're telling us civilization started in Sumer, in that Mesopotamian area, and I was wondering, okay, what's the first city? Because when I read about Cain going to build a city, I noted before I started looking into any of this that he went and he built, when you look into the Hebrew, some kind of fortified place. And if I read the next verse, verse 17 from Genesis 4, it says, "And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, and he builded a city." So, when you look into the Hebrew in this, you'll notice that it talks about a guarded place, a guarded city. And I'm going to show a little bit of information about that. But I noted on my own, and it's important for me to mention that I noted it on my own because I wasn't studying these histories of early times to note this. It's just that I'm reading from the Hebrew more now. And I'm realizing that it's far more powerful than any expression you're going to get in the English. When I looked at it, I realized for myself that, hold on, he builded a city. And you see, this is how the mind works. The Most High says, okay, we're told that the Most High said you're going to be moving away from here and you're going to be roaming and whatever, vagabond. And so the mind normally thinks according to the first things that you think of, or the first set of things that come to you after a change, and you stay in that, might I say, rut. And if something comes along later on to build up something else, it's difficult for the mind to break away from what was first thought, sometimes. But there is also this funny or uncanny thing where sometimes the mind will break away from locking onto the initial thought or instructions or revelation, and it will go with the new thing and ignore the first set of instruction or first information. So it's like the mind is more that part of you or your thought system that seems to gravitate toward what is popular, and more importantly, toward what is vibrant. And that's how people get into a lot of deception. If the thing is popular or vibrant, where even if it's not popular yet, because it's put in a flashy, vibrant, colorful, or eye-catching or mind-catching kind of way, or mind-stimulating kind of way, you might tend to go with that, and you will abandon years of proclivity to first set of instruction and knowledge that you had before. For instance, not want to get into it, but for instance, the whole Sabbath issue. The Most High talks about the Sabbath in the Old Testament so much, and somehow some people came along and started dealing with Sunday, Lord's Day, and so on, and they hit it so hard in such a short space of time, and it seems to take over people's minds, even though for thousands of years the Sabbath was mentioned. If you look at it now, thinking about that, we are first taught, so that our minds think that the Creator says you're going to be a vagabond, you're going to go on Rome, and so this is your punishment. Yet I noted that this man, Cain, does not go according to that punishment. So that's something I'm going to have to look into some more. Like, what kind of resistance is this? Or am I going to have to change my thoughts to understand what really happened? Because if you are getting a punishment, how do you escape that? If you are supposed to be roaming the earth like a vagabond, how do you just sit in one place and decide to build a city? Shouldn't you be roaming? Unless you roam for some time and then eventually settle down. That could be it, because they're not giving finer dating so that you can figure out timeline exactly of what happened. But in any case, he builded this city, and when you look into the Hebrew, it's telling you that it's somehow a place that's guarded. And that struck me as a place that is dealing with a lot of activity and fighting, some grievances and protection of your stuff and some kind of war. So that stood out to me right there. Now, the first thing I thought once I thought that, and by the way, like I said, that part didn't come to me by reading anything. It's just seeing it myself, because I've been on this trip lately of telling you about how your mind works. Because it seems to me that the mind that the Creator gave us is supposed to think on its own when it's functioning properly. So unaided or not influenced by others, your mind is supposed to look at information and be able to process it in a proper way. That actually makes sense. So once I started to think for myself that the man seems to be building some kind of city that has some guarding around it and towers and so on, then I'm left to think, what's this man protecting himself for if I've been taught in the Christian religion where I grew up that Adam and Eve were the only people, and then you got Cain and Abel and whatever all the little children you had, and Eve was there too. So it paints a picture of just a couple people on the earth. Yet this man goes and he builds a city, and it mentions that he built a city after he got some strange invisible wife. He builds this mysterious city in a nonchalant kind of way. It mentions it like building cities was just normal. Like this man just seemed to just, like you build computers for a living and you just build computers all the time. So, I'm building another computer. So it's like he knows already how to build a city, although that doesn't necessarily mean he could have just did it the first time and nobody else built one. And because he built it, then it just says he built it. So I'm here thinking that, okay, this city that he builded was the first city. So is this some city in Sumer? Is this Iraq? Like which city is this? Then I found Jericho being thought to be the oldest inhabited city on earth. So I said, okay, is Jericho Cain's city? Did Cain build this city? But then again, with how the mind works, I thought of it and I said, I think it's saying here that he builded a city and he went east in the land of Nod and he builded this city. But it doesn't actually say that he builded the first city. It just simply says he builded a city. So you see how the mind works. It's like even reading the Bible, you got to consider so many things, and it's like you just got to quiet down yourself, meaning you've got to somehow even temporarily kind of separate yourself from the other noises that you've heard of different views in order to think for yourself. But you're not going to get rid of those other views because one or more of those views may be correct in whatever you're studying, right? But at least you got to be able to quiet them down enough to think for yourself and then try to make sense of it. So it doesn't actually say that this is the first city on earth. But if this, what seems to be to me to be, I don't want to be rude and mean, but I mean, I can't help saying it, this lying teaching that these were the only handful of people on the earth, then it would seem to me then that if Jericho is the oldest inhabited city, and some are saying it is the oldest city, oldest continually inhabited city, some are saying, then if this is the first city, then it may well have been the city that Cain built, because I mean, it's just possible. Anyway, look at how old this city is. From Smith's Bible Dictionary, they're saying Jericho, a place of fragrance, a city of high antiquity. So that's it for that. They're letting you know that place is really old, called Jericho. Now from Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary, it says Jericho, Moon City, 5 miles west of the Jordan and 7 miles north of the Dead Sea, about 800 feet below sea level, an oasis with tropical climate. They're telling you something else important here, that there are 3 Jerichos, the Old Testament city and the New Testament city and a modern town near each other. So if you're doing further studies in Jericho, you got to keep that in mind. You'll come across it anyway. They said here, now the part I'm interested in, it is probably the oldest city in the world. Jericho has also been inhabited many, many times by different people. Now, let me read something here from the Interpreter's Dictionary of the Bible and Illustrated Encyclopedia, and it's talking about Jericho here. Look at this interesting information. This one actually has a lot of information on Jericho for a commentary. I'm reading from section 2 on Jericho. It talks about Neolithic Jericho. Neolithic is dealing with an old age, right? It's like about, New Stone Age, a period in the development, from Wikipedia here, of technology human technology beginning about 10,200 BC. So what they're saying right here, about Neolithic Jericho is that Jericho was a city that was there at least over 10,000 years ago, over 10,000 BC. So then that's telling me that if this whole creation started about 6,000 years ago and Adam and Eve were in the garden about 6,000 years ago, because they're saying Adam is about 4,000 BC, and from the so-called time of Christ, it's another 2,000 years to where we are now in 2017. So we're talking about 6,000 years ago. They're saying Jericho is about 8,000 years ago. But then now, this commentary here is saying Jericho was about being in the Neolithic period was about 10,000 or over 10,000 BC. So you start to see the problem with reading the Bible now and what you've been taught all along. That would mean that Jericho was an inhabited place with lots of trade and so on, because it's situated in a nice trade route area between the different areas and cities around it. So it was always going to be a prime target area, as people are going to be coming after it to, you know how they do, and it's not like it's old times. They're still doing it today, trying to take over different lands and so on. So if Jericho was this important trade route in that area, then that means that they were targeted a lot, which then would mean that if this had anything to do with Cain, and it doesn't have to be Cain City, but it would then be the case that it's at least similar to what Cain was doing in terms of building a city that was guarded because he felt threatened. And he was a killer, so that alone let him feel threatened because he's scared people are going to kill him. But if it's not Cain City, at least someone here built this place about 10,000 BC and felt that they needed to be guarding it properly with towers and so on, right? Which then means that people had a lot of fear of threat and warfare at that time. That means that if people were concerned about warfare and being attacked, pillaged and killed and all that for their resources 4,000 years or more before Adam and the Garden of Eden, then where in the beep does Adam come on the scene 4,000 years or so after this Jericho and acting like he don't have any knowledge of how to build a city? He just stays in this garden. I mean, this is a regular garden of regular trees, but I told you at some point I want to do a lesson on the trees in the Bible, because sometimes trees are mentioned as people, as nations. So is this a garden of nations, and a serpent, which represented a nation or someone from one of the nations, came by to take down this nation the Most High was setting up with Adam, which could possibly be Israel or some pre-Israel person the Most High is working with, but still representing that nation of people that he wanted to work with. So in that sense then, if it is a nation, then I could understand that snake nation coming to take down the people that the Most High is working with in this other nation that he had already set up, that Adam was governing as a king or ruler, or that he was trying to set up with Adam. So now that I've confused you so much, let me just continue in throwing more information on top of all that, and then you can try to see if you can figure it out with me. I tell you, this is really frustrating, trying to comb through some of the confusing teachings, right? Because now I'm understanding that the Bible is not the kind of book that you just pick up. No wonder in the Christian church they just teach you just read the New Testament, because you don't have to have knowledge. The Holy Spirit will just give you knowledge, a word of knowledge, and the Spirit and revelation. And no wonder you're so spiritually naive if you're just in the New Testament alone, because it doesn't give enough history to understand the fullness of the Bible, the fullness of what went on in the Hebrew scriptures, to give you some more knowledge of what really went on in the world anyway, and what the Creator was doing. And what's this thing about China? Like, you got this ancient nation hardly mentioned in the Bible, but then you find that they were around for so long, and everybody's not focusing on them, but they seem to have such ancient information that they've changed up their language over time. Well, I guess many languages have been changed. And if you really want to find out some of the juicy ancient information that they have in their records, you got to try to figure out some of their ancient language. and then a lot of their books have been burnt and gotten rid of because somebody has something to hide, and you're not going to get access to that ancient information over there anyway. And then, so why isn't China mentioned that much when some claim they have such ancient information? So I'm just trying to show that there's a lot of hidden things that you just got to dig. And as much as I don't want to get into this stuff because it's kind of frustrating, I'm just stuck on it. I can't help it. I've been working on this for a while, and today alone was at least 6 hours looking into this stuff, just today alone. So now it's telling you here from this commentary about Neolithic Jericho, which was about over 10,000 BC, 4,000 years or more before Adam lived. This city was up and flourishing, and somehow Adam comes on the scene like nobody else was existing. But it says here, but there is another phase of excavations at es-Sultan, which is the new name for Jericho. And you wonder who is living over there and naming it that, and we don't focus on them in Bible history enough. They don't seem to get mentioned enough. I don't know. And that deserves notice, namely the Neolithic period. This was discovered by Garstang, and he continued to dig down to a pre-pottery period before 5000 BC. So if Adam was about 4004 BC, call it 4000, then they're telling you that this person digged down and found stuff at least 1,000 years before Adam came along. A lot of things can happen in 1,000 years. Whole empires can fall and rise again in 1,000 years. Sometimes some empires don't even last 1,000 years. Sometimes it's just like 200 or 300 years. Rome went to about nearly 600 years, and much is spoken of them. And then you got others before them. So a lot can happen in 1,000 years. So a lot of things happened in 1,000 years, according to these datings, before Adam showed up on the scene. In other words, I'm trying to tell you, if all this information is correct, and it's seeming to be more so, the more I look into this stuff, then it's telling me that Adam was kind of late. All kinds of things happened before Adam and the Garden of Eden. But it was Miss Kenyon who revealed the phenomenal nature of this Neolithic period. This phase of Jericho's history throws new light on the pre-Abrahamic chapters of Genesis. You get that? The pre-Abrahamic Genesis. And so Abraham would have lived probably nearly 2,000 years after, over 1,900 years or so after Adam lived. Well, that's going to factor in some more as I go on. Let me just continue. Miss Kenyon has demonstrated that civilization actually existed here several thousand years earlier than anyone had even dreamed of. Carbon-14 dating has confirmed this. Now, I understand this carbon-14 dating, some don't like it and so on, but in general, it seems to go to help you date stuff about 2,000 to 3,000 years, from what I understand. Maybe I'll need to check on that again to see if somehow it's been improved or what. But beyond that, I guess they find other ways to date and test stuff. But one wonders, because I've told you before in the other recordings about some people who are saying some other really astronomical dates. I was just reading from this other site about Africa, and they're telling you about how many millions of years, man, and whatever, and they always boil down to about 6,000 to 10,000 years for Adam. It's like everybody seems to come down to around the time of Adam's dating. And I'm wondering where they get these incredible dates from, like 10,000, like 2 million BC. People are fighting over your dating for 10,000 years ago or 20,000 years ago. And when you get to 50,000 years ago, people are like almost ready to go to some intellectual war. And you got these other people who are telling you factual things the way they present it about 2 million BC. 2 million years before all of this fighting that we want to do over much more recent dates. But as I was saying now, with Abraham living just under 2,000 years after Adam, then it's telling you that for several thousand years before this stuff is going on here, with the pre-Abrahamic chapters of Genesis, they're finding stuff that's showing some new information. It's really funny because when you look at several definition here, it's saying that it means a number more than 2 or 3, but not many, such as several miles away. So more than 2 or 3, but not many. So not like 20 or 50. So several thousand years, let's say 4,000 or 5,000 years or so, So if they're comparing and mentioning here Adam and Abraham lived, as I mentioned, roughly under 2,000 years after Adam. So if you're dealing with Jericho findings several thousand years before Abraham, then if several is telling you about 2 or 3, then several thousand years would mean a little bit more than 2 or 3,000 years before Abraham, but not an extreme amount. So that would then mean they have found things in Jericho that says to us that Jericho was up and running as a city probably more than 2 or 3,000 years before Abraham. So let's not go too far. Let's say 4 or 5,000 years before Abraham. That would then mean probably anywhere from 1 to 3,000 years before Adam, which still puts us at the date of around what they're saying Jericho is being dated at around 8 to 10,000 BC. So now you see what I'm saying here, because if you're trying to understand certain things in the Bible, because I'm rereading the Bible, which is why I got into all of this difficulty anyway, and I'm telling you many times, because I've been looking into this for probably 2 or 3 months now, many times I just I can't talk about this Jericho stuff anymore. I can't, because I search, I read, I'm wasting, well, I shouldn't say wasting, I should say spending my money buying these books and whatever. I got another book I got to read from you here. It's like I'm going through all this stuff, and it's like sometimes I just get tired of reading, and just the 2 things I hate to read about: politics and world history. Absolutely hate those 2. Absolutely. Give me some complicated doctrines and I'll read until I just have to sleep. My eyes are getting there. And I hate reading about politics, and I find in terms of reading the Bible, I have to read about all these kings and how they function, and I can't stand that. I was reading about Sumer and all the different kings and the king list and all kinds of stuff, and I was looking at that maybe 2 weeks ago, and I said I'm going to give this my best effort, and within about 5 minutes I was just no, forget this. I'm thinking they're going to tell me like 5 kings or something. They're giving this long list. I'm like, who's going to sit down and read all of that? But some people have the knack for it, and I'm glad, because, hey, we have to learn from somewhere. But it goes on here. These Neolithic cities occupy 45 feet of debris, representing about 20 successive house levels. So they're trying to tell you here that a lot of things have happened. Different people groups had lived in this city of Jericho, in that area, right? So as they get broken down and kingdoms get taken down and so on and conquered, things got builded and maybe floods or whatever, and the city keeps being rebuilt over time. Equally significant is the size of these cities. So they were large. So again, that's telling you this was a bustling place. This was usually seen as being probably what you might call some type of a metropolitan today. It was up and running. This was nothing like if it was Cain, he just went there, it was just him and his family, or if it was Adam, he was just there on his own or something, right? Or Adam got kicked out of Eden, wherever that was, and comes there. So I don't know. This was just a big place. This was going on, lots of trade around the area. So life was up and running when you deal with ancient Jericho. And that is strange to what we normally think of when we read the Bible. So this, okay, so they're saying here it was approximately 8 acres in area, the same as many as an Old Testament city. Their houses had well-designed rooms characterized by the use of burnished plaster on floors and walls. And they go on to explain some more of how it was built, and talking about prehistory and fertility cult objects coming to later times were here also. So at least it's trying to tell you that if they got well-designed rooms and nice finish to their floorings and their walls, this wasn't just like somebody the likes of Cain, who never knew anything about building, construction, and how to finish walls nicely and proper finishing and limestone and whatever they use. This was people who were building stuff for a while, and they learn and learn and learn and improve their building skills to give all that nice finishing to what they were doing. Which means that it wasn't just like the time of Adam, who seems to have not been handling anything about building, but seems to have only been dealing with some natural things like trees, and maybe going on to some place to watch some fish swim by while he talks with Eve. Look now, ancient Jericho from padfield.com. It says here, Jericho is the oldest fortified city in the world. And they said Moses had a marvelous view of this ancient city. So again, and this same Jericho was the town of Rahab the harlot. It's telling you again that this city of Jericho, one more time they're telling you, is ancient. So many people seem to be saying this place is really ancient. Another website here, faculty.vassar.edu, and the string goes on. It says Jericho is considered one of the oldest cities in the world. It was a mighty fenced city in the midst of a vast grove of palm trees. Now, I know you know, but I'm being really simplistic here in my studies, because I'm trying to figure out what the Bible is really about. I'm coming at this with just some real simplistic, childish kind of learning to finally try to learn the Bible for myself. So let's look up what mighty means from the Free Dictionary, freedictionary.com. Mighty means having or showing great power, skill, strength, or force. And I told you, Cain went and he built a city, and from the Hebrew it's telling you something to deal with a guarded city, like some tower and fencing or military might. So if Cain got this strange, mysterious wife and built this strange and mysterious city and needed to set it up in some kind of a military kind of way, then whether or not that was Jericho, it is at least telling us that somehow people were able to build in those times great and mighty and powerful places. Now, think as well that if Jericho was this kind of a powerful and strong place, why would someone coming from Eden, because they got kicked out, go on to building this mighty, powerful place? Even if you just killed your brother and you are the most sought after murderer on the earth by the other 2 or 3 people that supposedly were living on the earth, why are you building a mighty place, whether you were the one that built Jericho or you built someplace else that was mighty? It would seem to me that if you're going to build a city and you are Cain, you or whoever built Jericho even before Adam, it would seem to me that if the earth was of an Adamic / Edenic kind of understanding and that kind of nature and atmosphere was there in the earth at that time, that if you figure out how to build something, build until it turns into a house, then eventually you manage to build so much that you can call it a city, then it wouldn't have any kind of warfare kind of feel about it and so on, right? Because that kind of thinking isn't there if the earth is really this young as they tell us, 6,000 years. You would more just build large just because people are growing and a society is actually developing, because more and more of you are having more children. You're just growing and you just need another house. Oh, you have a baby. You have another house, build it, another house, and until it just becomes what you might call a town or a city. But to build a mighty place with strength and power, military might, means that a lot more history was happening before Adam, and certainly at the time when Jericho was built or something like that. You seeing what I'm trying to tell you? Is that a lot of history is not presented to us just by reading what's there in the Bible, it seems. So a lot more was going on. So why are we just given this whole Adam stuff in a way where it's like nothing else was happening on the earth? Adam's the first man. And where's this thing about Cain getting this tool from that I've been looking in, and I'm not done looking into it yet, to strike down his brother with, as if there was some kind of manufacturing or building of tool? Because when I look at it some more, I find that the kind of tool that he may have been using seem to have come later on in later ages. So that's placing the dating for Cain and in effect Adam at a time later than it seems they're giving to us. So that's messing up with your understanding of time in the Bible. It seems that the Bible rushes towards developing the story of Israel. Rush, rush, rush. And it deals so heavily with the kings of Israel. And it's like, and then the strange thing too is that they seem to have found a way to just conveniently dismiss Adam from your mind. Genealogy of Adam, and then other genealogists seem to just want to ignore him, as if this first man on the earth is not that important. Even other people who did some wicked stuff in the earth, I mean, they still get mentioned. And you get this Satan creature, seems so wicked, but he gets talked about often enough. But I mean, I don't know. So it's just a lot of questions I have, right? It was a mighty fenced city. So he goes on here now to say, from vassar.edu, Jericho is thought to be the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world. Again, here somebody saying it's very old, dating back nearly 10,000 years. 10,000 years, located beyond the northern portion of the Dead Sea, one of the lowest places on earth. So again, it takes even a special spot on the earth. It's letting you know that this place, Jericho, whatever you might think or not think about it because you don't have enough information about it, this is some kind of special place. But it just doesn't seem to be mentioned in the early part of Genesis, and somehow it doesn't seem to be tied to Cain in the scriptures. Nobody ever seemed to visit it there in the times right after the garden, it seems. And Adam, a very wise man who names all the creatures of the earth, it's there a couple thousand years before him, and he never goes and looks for it or visits it. Could it be then that if it was really nearly 5,000 years before Adam and Eve and Cain and so on, that Cain learned warfare because Jericho was a mighty place, dealing with war obviously, and was known to be a place of war and destruction, and it comes back up, then it war again, it comes back down. Could it be that Cain somehow was familiar with this and learned his warfare from it? They're not telling you that, but I mean, my mind has to wonder, are people, since they did a lot of trading there and have to go past the space Jericho, people were coming and going and somehow met this guy Cain, and Cain learned his evil from them because he had to learn evil somewhere. But I know you tell me it's because of the snake and he's a child of the snake. Yeah, he's a child of a talking snake. Whenever you heard a snake talk, and snake having sex with women and give birth to humans. Let's come off this website. At least he's showing you again that there's some other place out there. This looks like some kind of a university, faculty.vassar.edu. They're telling you Jericho ancient. This is from BiblePlaces.com talking about Jericho, which is now called es-Sultan. After Jerusalem, Jericho is the most excavated site in Israel. See that? Why is it the most? Because there's stuff there. Charles Warren in 1868 sank several shafts, but concluded that nothing was to be found. He missed the Neolithic tower by a meter. Germans Selin and Watzinger excavated from 1907 to 1913. Garstang 1930 to 36. So these are fairly recent times, right? It's like people were living all these thousands of years and nobody cared to really mention it heavily, to the point where people had to go and dig just to find some information. Where all the stories of the people who are living there for these thousands of years telling their story in great detail. It's like it seems like these modern people would rather dig for themselves than get the stories of the people who are telling them how long this place has actually been here. What if the people tell you that, no, this place is only 5,000 years old? You're going to fight back and tell them, well, we dug and this is what we found. It's 10,000. Yeah, but our people were the first people here from ancient times, and they were 5,000 years old. No, I don't care what you say. I dug this stuff and I'm paid thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars per year to dig this stuff, and you're 10,000 years old in this place. Anyway, the Neolithic tower discovered in this ancient Jericho. Discovered and excavated by Kathleen Kenyon in her Trench 1, the Neolithic Tower was built and destroyed in pre-pottery Neolithic A, and they go on with the extra special stuff. Point I want to make from this paragraph is that the tower, again, they're finding. So now you're dealing with towers, which is what I mentioned before. This Cain guy, he built a city and it seems to have been guarded, and we know towers were used in biblical times and ancient times as a part of some kind of military construct. For guarding your place. You look out, you heard this term in the Bible, the watchman up on the tower, means he's watching out to see if there's going to come some attack from some other nation, and then he would warn everyone, So they had towers there. So I'm telling you now that if Cain builded a place that was guarded, and this ancient place of Jericho had towers, like it was guarded as well, then a lot of information seems to have been left out of the Bible. So what I'm saying to you is, based on your studying of the Bible, you have to rethink things to get a better understanding of the things that you read, especially when you start to read the prophecies in the Bible. You can get a better understanding, because sometimes we read the prophecies. For the ones of us who are newer, especially just coming out of the Christian church, we read the Bible with such a mysterious and a Christianized kind of view of prophecy. But you have to understand that the prophecies are dealing with things that actually happened at specific times and are telling about future events as well. But they are coming off the support or the heels of what was going on at a particular point in history. And so you get a better understanding of why the prophecy was said that way and why the person gave the prophecy out in that way, because you understand the time that they were living in. You understand how they might have been cultured or influenced by what was going on in their land. In this case, we're talking about the Israelites, but also how they might have been cultured or influenced by the other kingdoms around them and the other sojourners or visitors that came into their land and somehow affected them. So you get a better understanding of how to interpret stuff, right? So you see, that's why I'm going through rereading the Bible, because I need to start to look and think of the page of the Bible for myself, because I cannot continue anymore after coming out of Christianity to allow other people to tell me what I should believe. I cannot ignore other people, and I learn from a lot of people. I'm reading more and more books than ever before in my life. But I cannot allow them alone to tell me. I must think for myself as well. I must. That's why I'm rereading the Bible, and I'm reading things I don't want to read, like I said, politics and history, world history. This website, whc.unesco.org, and the string goes on. This article entitled Ancient Jericho, Tell es-Sultan. It starts out here, Tell es-Sultan, the ancient city of Jericho is the lowest, 258 meters below sea level, and the oldest town on earth. Again, somebody else telling you it's the oldest town on earth. It grew up around a perennial spring. It was in an area of fertile alluvial soil, and every time I see that kind of stuff, talking about this stuff, Eden comes to my mind, but I'll try to attack that some other time. Which attracted, because I'm trying to see, I was looking up into where Cain might have come from in order to go east, right? So if you look on the map to go east, I'm trying to guess at that. So as I torture myself more with more study time for that, I'll try to throw out and tell you. I'm not going to tell you where Eden was because I don't know, but some are saying it will be somewhere around this area. But hey, I will just give some ideas, but there's no way I can tell you where. But anyway, it was in this fertile soil area which attracted hunter-gatherer crops to settle down. and to start a process of plant and animal domestication. Archaeological excavations carried out in the mid-20th century evidenced 23 layers of ancient civilizations at this site. 23 layers of ancient civilizations. So this was a place that was going up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. The earliest remains date back to the Natufian period. That's 10th to 8th millennia BC. And when you look at this, there seems to be some reference by some to Genesis chapter 13, verse 10 to 13. It says here, "And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered," and I just told you about the fertile soil. "It was well watered everywhere before the Most High destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Most High, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar." So somebody seems to be hinting towards Jericho being close to Eden. Now they're saying also that there was a stone wall that supported a massive round tower. Again, this whole guarding, like people were scared of something or watching out for something before Adam came about. These are the earliest urban fortifications, again, that deal with some kind of war and protection, known in the world, later several times replaced. This Neolithic population of Jericho developed a complex society where house construction, crafts such as weaving and matting, and mythological and social conception of burial and religion were practiced. That's telling you that, to skip over the other parts, okay, well, no, let me mention these two. House construction and weaving and matting was going on. So it tells you now in Genesis, let's get it back here. With the house, people were building houses before Adam came, if these dates are correct, right? Now, look at this in Genesis chapter 3, coming close to the end of Genesis chapter 3. It says, Genesis 3 and verse 21, "And unto Adam also and to his wife did the Most High power make coats of skin and clothe them." So people are telling me that this is animal sacrifice, like a lamb, which then points to Jesus. I don't see any Messiah in the book of Genesis, and certainly not in this creation story or post-creation story. This doesn't talk about animal sacrifice as far as I can see. That tells us some future Jesus. If he wanted to say a Messiah is coming, he would have just clearly said it. What this tells me is that the Most High made them clothes. So anyway, if he made them clothes, why is he making them clothes? Listen to this. For the dumbing down of our minds. Why is it that he made them clothes when you got other people who weren't in touch with the Creator like Adam was, who were doing their own house construction, and you got to have tools and so on to do construction. You see how many tools construction people have today? So their kind of tools would have been different, but they had all kinds of tools to build houses. Adam doesn't seem to know anything about houses, and they were doing weaving and matting, crafts like weaving and matting, which means that these people may have been making their own clothes as well. But Adam, the wisest man on earth at the time, who was naming all the creatures of the earth, and who was the only one, or I should say the first one to have spoken language and used words among men, not talking about the Creator, but he seems to be so wise and so on, that he becomes a target of an intelligent serpent as well, who also somehow can speak their language. And so he has all this intelligence, but he can't make his own clothes. But you got people in some other city that's doing their own weaving. And a wise man, the Creator, has to come down and make clothes for him. I don't know. Why did I start looking into this stuff? Alright, let me close it out with this book here now. Actually, before I do that, from Wikipedia, as I mentioned, the Natufian culture was going on around this time of this ancient Jericho. Wikipedia here, is saying that these Natufian people they built this place, it seems, with a lot of fortification, as I mentioned, the towers and so on, which takes me back to this whole Cain of building a guarded city. Fortification is dealing with some kind of military construction or setup for defense and warfare. So Cain seemed to have known about war, and some other people seem to have known, like it gets freaky when you're trying to figure out what the Bible is about. Wikipedia also says a Natufian culture existed from around 12,500 to 9,500 BC in the Levant. Hear this. The Levant is an approximate historical geographical term referring to a large area in the eastern Mediterranean. The countries and territories of the eastern Mediterranean include Cyprus, Greece, Lebanon, Syria, what they're now calling Palestine, Israel, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Libya. Now, when you read the Bible, doesn't it sound like those are places that the Most High promised to the nation that he was setting up? You see that? So it's telling you in that area that the Most High is dealing with. People were living long time before he set up the man Adam and before he set up Eden. So are we then to understand that all this was going on, but maybe because of all this warfare and so on, it shows that there was a lot of evil and wickedness, because man seems to have so much propensity to evil, just like in the days of Noah, that the flood came, that they were just wicked like that, and he took the man, or whoever he took out of this godly seed, might I say, who we might now call Adam, and placed him in the garden, a place he was setting up to separate them from the evil people, so that he can have this quote-unquote godly seed on the earth, to set up a nation, who would later be known as Israel, that was going to lead the earth in the proper way to live on the earth. That's one way that you can think of it, that there were all this wickedness going on, and the Most High is like, come out of her, my people, I'm going to make you whatever. And he takes somebody who's there, and he comes and puts this person there. Just like how Abraham was removed from one place and start to sojourn and go wherever, and the Most High makes him a promise and so on. So basically Abraham is being removed from people who are doing a lot of idolatrous practices which don't point to the Creator, right? So this whole story of the garden and Adam and then Eve comes on in the picture could just be some kind of a way to tell us that the Most High was trying to start or continue to bring back some kind of quote-unquote godly presence on the earth. But the people who grew out of that and grew out of Abraham and so on and later called Israel, they fell again, and it still needs to be worked on. So hunter-gatherers were living in the Levant around 10,000 years ago in what is called that Natufian period. And they said here, Natufians founded Jericho, which may be the oldest city in the world. And the Bible doesn't want to, I don't know. This site of Jericho is, and the Natufians, is situated in the plain of the Jordan Valley. So then is the Garden of Eden somewhere in the Jordan Valley or close by that area? That would mean Adam and Eve are somewhere around there. Some are saying that, right? It's a lot of stuff. So now, I said it before 2 or so times, so let me really close it out with reading from this book called Time Frame, The Rise of Cities from, is this Time Life? Time Life Books. Anyway, I only have one paragraph or a half of the paragraph I'll read and close it out. It says here, the Middle Eastern civilization of Sumer first rose from the mud of Mesopotamia in about 3500 BC, which would then mean that this also came late if Jericho is really found to be 10,000, right? So Sumer came up around in Mesopotamia about 3500 BC alongside the life-giving waters of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. The Sumerian cities were by no means the first in the world. See, they're telling you here that they found stuff that's letting them know it's not the first cities in the world. But there were other cities, and Sumer just probably became famous for kind of coalescing or bringing together these other cities and kind of started this Sumer empire, if you can say, right? As early as 8000 BC, some 3,000 people had dwelt within the walls of Jericho, a city situated by a gushing freshwater spring in the lower Jordan Valley. So then, and in Sumer, then they had rulers, laws, gods, and culture. So you're telling me they found evidence that around 8000 BC, about 3,000 people had lived in the city of Jericho, then telling us that Adam would not have been the first person, because a couple thousand, 3,000 to 5,000 years before he lived, if these dates are correct, you got at least 3,000 people living in just this city, Jericho, alone. Or am I missing something? Is Jericho this Eden place or close by it, and it grew like that because, I don't know, there's all kinds of speculations. But while some of my questioning seems over the top, it helps me to learn more. It pushes me to study more, and I hope it's pushing you as well to study and learn some more. Because I've told you before, I've learned a lot more things just by questioning and questioning and questioning. I hope you're questioning stuff as well, and you're going to learn a lot. Thanks for listening. Until next time.